This single ship carries more firepower than 70% of the world's air forces. It houses 5,000 people, launches aircraft every 25 seconds, and can operate continuously for 25 years without refueling. And right now, there are 11 of these floating cities patrolling the world's oceans. But here's what should terrify anyone who opposes American interests. Every one of these carriers can project more combat power than most nations' entire militaries combined, and they can appear off any coastline in the world within 2 weeks. Aircraft carriers aren't ships. They're mobile sovereign territory. They're diplomatic weapons that don't fire a shot. They're the reason America can influence events on the other side of the planet, as if those events were happening in America's backyard. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to break down exactly how these engineering marvels work, why they're almost impossible to sink, and why no other country has been able to replicate what America does with carriers. And if you're fascinated by how military technology shapes global power, hit that subscribe button because we're about to dive deep into the most complex war machines ever built. Let's start with scale, because until you understand the sheer size of these vessels, nothing else makes sense. The Nimitz-class carriers are 1,092 feet long. That's longer than the Eiffel Tower is tall. They displace over 100,000 tons when fully loaded. They stand 20 stories high from keel to mast. But size is just the beginning. These ships are nuclear-powered, which means they never need to refuel. The reactors can run for 25 years before requiring replacement. In practical terms, a carrier's only limit is the food and ammunition it carries, not fuel. The United States operates 11 of these supercarriers, more than the rest of the world combined. And here's the strategic reality. These 11 ships give America the ability to conduct full-scale air operations anywhere on Earth without needing permission to use foreign air bases. But the real question isn't what they are. It's how they work and why they're so devastatingly effective at projecting power. The primary mission of an aircraft carrier is right in the name. It carries aircraft, but calling it a floating airbase dramatically understates what's happening on that 4.5-acre flight deck. A Nimitz-class carrier typically carries 60 to 70 aircraft. FA-18 Super Hornets, EA-18G Growlers for electronic warfare, E-2D Hawkeyes for early warning, and MH-60 helicopters. Together, these aircraft can strike targets 500 miles away, establish air superiority, conduct reconnaissance, and perform search and rescue. But here's what makes carriers truly formidable: the launch tempo. Using 4 steam catapults, a carrier can launch 1 aircraft every 25 seconds during sustained operations. That means a full air wing can be airborne in under 30 minutes. Those catapults accelerate a 50,000-pound aircraft from 0 to 165 miles per hour in just 2 seconds. The forces involved are so extreme that pilots experience 3 to 4 Gs during every launch, the equivalent of a car crash, but controlled and routine. Recovery is even more impressive. Aircraft returning to the carrier must catch one of 4 arresting wires with a tailhook while landing on a moving runway that's pitching in ocean swells. They touch down at 150 miles per hour on a deck that's only 750 feet long. If you miss all the wires, you have to immediately take off again. That's called a bolter. The margin for error is essentially 0, and yet, carrier pilots do this day and night in all weather conditions, routinely and safely. During a 6-month deployment, a carrier will conduct thousands of launches and recoveries. This isn't just about having aircraft, it's about having a fully functional airbase that moves 30 knots across the ocean and operates in international waters where no one can tell you to leave. Now let's talk about what's happening below that flight deck, because that's where the real complexity lives. An aircraft carrier is a self-contained city of 5,000 people operating 24/7 in an environment that would kill you in minutes if something goes wrong. Below deck, you'll find everything a small city needs: hospitals with operating rooms, dental clinics, a post office, a newspaper, multiple galleys serving 18,000 meals per day, a barber shop, and even a chapel. But the real magic is in the systems that keep this city functioning. The ship produces 400,000 gallons of fresh water per day through desalination. It generates enough electricity to power a city of 100,000 people. It has its own air conditioning system, sewage treatment, and machine shops that can fabricate almost any part needed for repairs. The hangar deck below the flight deck is essentially a massive garage where aircraft are maintained, repaired, and stored. This space is so large you could fit 3 football fields inside it. And it's here that the real work happens. Keeping 70 aircraft combat ready is a 24-hour operation requiring thousands of maintenance actions per day. But perhaps the most impressive aspect is damage control. Every sailor on a carrier is trained in firefighting, flood control, and emergency response. The ship is divided into hundreds of compartments that can be sealed off to contain damage. There are backup systems for the backup systems. This redundancy is why carriers are so hard to sink. You're not attacking a ship. You're attacking a floating fortress with multiple layers of defense, redundant systems, and thousands of trained personnel ready to respond to any emergency. And all of this, the city, the airbase, the fortress, moves through the ocean at 30 knots, can turn on a dime despite its size, and operates in conditions from tropical heat to Arctic cold. Here's a critical point. Carriers never operate alone. They're the centerpiece of a carrier strike group, typically consisting of 7 to 10 ships that transform the carrier from a powerful asset into a virtually impregnable fortress. A typical strike group includes 1 or 2 Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers with Aegis combat systems, 1 Ticonderoga-class cruiser, a nuclear attack submarine running below the surface, and a supply ship for logistics support. The Aegis cruisers and destroyers form defensive rings around the carrier. Their radar systems can track hundreds of targets simultaneously at ranges over 200 miles. Their missiles can shoot down aircraft, cruise missiles, and even ballistic missiles. But the submarine is the most lethal member of the group. It operates ahead of the carrier, hunting for enemy submarines and surface ships. Enemy forces often don't know the submarine is there until it's too late. Together, these ships create overlapping defensive zones. To attack the carrier, you'd have to penetrate multiple layers of defense. Submarines beneath the waves, destroyers and cruisers on the surface with long-range missiles, fighter jets overhead, and electronic warfare systems jamming your sensors. This is why no carrier has been sunk in combat since World War II. It's not that they're invulnerable, it's that getting through the defensive screen is nearly impossible. And even if you did, the carrier itself is built to survive multiple hits. And here's the strategic multiplier. While the strike group defends the carrier's aircraft can strike targets hundreds of miles away. This creates a bubble of control 500 miles in diameter around the strike group. That's an area larger than California. Within that bubble, the U.S. Navy controls the sea, the air above it, and can project power onto land. That's not just sea control. That's regional dominance from a mobile platform. If you're starting to understand why aircraft carriers are the ultimate power projection tool, smash that like button right now. And if you want to see how other nations are trying to counter American carrier dominance, spoiler alert, they're failing, subscribe, because we cover cutting-edge military technology every week. Now, let's talk about why carriers are actually diplomatic weapons that rarely need to fire a shot. Here's where carriers transcend being merely military assets and become instruments of foreign policy. The phrase, "Where are the carriers?" isn't just a question. It's how American presidents respond to global crises. If this breakdown gave you a new appreciation for the complexity and strategic importance of these ships, subscribe right now because we analyze military technology, naval warfare, and geopolitical strategy every week with this depth. And if you want to understand the opposite side of this equation, how China and Russia are trying to counter American carrier dominance with anti-ship missiles and submarines, check out my video on the new generation of carrier killers and why the Navy is taking them very seriously. The question, "Where are the carriers?" will continue to shape American foreign policy because no other military asset combines power, presence, and flexibility like these floating cities. Thanks for watching. Stay curious about the technology that shapes our world.